Hello and welcome to Cooking with Miss Michelle. Today I'm going to show you how to make kimchi. Kimchi is a fermented food that's really delicious and healthy, and it has many uses. Kimchi can be eaten by itself. It can be added to rice, pasta, used as pasta sauce. You can use it as a condiment. You can eat it on hot dogs. You can eat it on stir fry. I personally just like to eat it by itself. I know other people that have used it to make like kimchi meatloaf. You can use it to add to soups, and there's lots of other different uses for it, but it's really delicious and it's pretty easy to make. It takes about a week to ferment, but the actual preparation only takes a little bit of time. You will have to let it sit for a while, but hands-on time is not very long. So for this project, you're gonna need a medium or large head of Napa cabbage. The recipe actually asks for fish sauce, but I am vegetarian, so I usually just substitute soy sauce, or you can use coconut aminos if you don't eat wheat or soy. You'll need some salt and some chili. I just have like chili pepper. You can also use like sriracha sauce, or if you don't like spicy food, you can just leave that ingredient out altogether. You're also gonna need a teaspoon of sugar. The recipe calls for daikon radish, but I have some fresh radishes from my garden, so I'm just gonna use those instead. Some fresh ginger, garlic, a couple of green onions, and some carrots. So the first thing you're gonna do is take your cabbage, and you wanna just take out the core. So I like to leave this really thick white part. This is actually one of my favorite parts to eat when it's fermented, but I'm just gonna take out this bottom core. So if you cut it in half, you can see the core is not very big. So I'm just gonna make a little bit of a V cut to take that out. And I'm gonna save this part here. And then once I have the core out, I can either chop this into pieces or just rip it up. And I don't want it in tiny pieces, I want it in pieces that'll give me a nice bite-sized piece. So they can be slightly different sizes, but I don't want them to be in tiny pieces. And I'm gonna put my pieces into a big strainer. So you can have a few different people help you rip it up or chop it up and put it into your strainer. Okay, so once I have that all chopped up, I'm gonna put it in my big strainer, and I'm gonna put that over a bowl. And then I'm gonna toss it with 3 tablespoons of salt. And you can use pretty much any kind of salt. This is canning salt. You could use kosher salt or just regular salt or sea salt. But this is gonna help my cabbage. I want it to get kind of wilty, and the salt is gonna pull the water and juices out of it and help it get wilty. So I'm just gonna toss it with my hands, or I can use some forks for this step. So I coat the cabbage with some salt. And then I'm gonna let this sit for about 2 hours, and maybe 2 to 3 hours until it gets wilty. So I'll come back before the end of 2 hours and get the rest of my ingredients ready. Okay, so it's been about 1 hour and 40 minutes. My cabbage is looking pretty wilty. I'm just gonna give it a shake, and I'm gonna start getting the rest of my ingredients ready while I wait for this to finish wilting. So I'm gonna need some carrots and radishes, and it says you can shred them, so you could either shred them with a cheese grater or you could just chop them up if you don't have a cheese grater or if you prefer to chop them up. So I'm just gonna hold these by the leaves, and I'm gonna do it on the bigger shredder side. If you want a little bit of variety too, you can shred some and slice them up if you like some bigger size pieces and some smaller pieces. And I'm just gonna save the ends of these for the animals. And it says you want about a cup of each, so I'm gonna try to guess when I have a half a cup. If you have a little bit more, that's fine. Or if you love carrots, you could add extra carrots. There's different recipes of kimchi too, so there's different ways you can make it. If you want to add other vegetables, this is just the recipe that I use out of my canning book that I really like. So if that starts to get too small, I can just keep that piece and put it in like that. Perfect. Alright, so I'm just going to start combining these ingredients in a big bowl. I want to have a nice big bowl because when my cabbage is finished wilting, I'm going to mix everything together. Okay, so I probably have a little bit of extra carrot, but like I said, that's totally fine. Okay, so now I want to add a tablespoon of grated fresh ginger. This is obviously more than a tablespoon, so I'm going to cut off a piece. And a really easy way to peel ginger is with a spoon. So if you just hold the ginger with one hand, you can scrape the edge with a spoon. You could also use a carrot peeler, but this is just kind of easy because it can follow the little curves in the ginger and it peels the skin off really well. Alright, that looks like about a tablespoon, maybe a little bit extra. I'm going to throw that in. And then I'm going to slice up my green onions, so I'm just going to cut the root off. And then I'll just slice these into little thin slices. Alright, and then I'm going to need to add some fresh garlic. So the recipe asks for 2 cloves, but I always like to add a little bit extra because I love garlic. So an easy way to peel your garlic is to take a spoon and use the heel of your hand and squish it. Whoops, sometimes it might shoot away. But most of the time, if you squish it, then you can take the skin off really easily. And you have a nice start to cutting it because it'll be squished. Okay, so after I peel my garlic, I'm just gonna cut the top off if there's an end that I don't want Some of them might not have it. Then I'm just gonna chop this up. It doesn't have to be too small. Okay, so now I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of either fish sauce, soy sauce, or you can use coconut aminos. Depending on how spicy you like it, you can add 0 to 2 tablespoons of this chili powder. I'm just gonna do 1 tablespoon. And sorry, it's not chili powder, they're red pepper flakes. And then I'm gonna add a teaspoon of sugar. And then I'm gonna mix this all together. And then it looks like my cabbage is pretty wilty. So before I add this, I'm going to rinse all the salt off because it has a lot more salt than I want. And then I'm gonna shake it off really well, try to get as much water out of it as I can. And you can see that it wilted down quite a bit from what I started out with. So then I'm gonna add this to my other vegetables. And I'm gonna mix everything together. And then I'm going to let this sit for about 10 minutes and come back to it. Okay, so this has been sitting for about 10 minutes. Now I want to put something over this. So if I had a plate that fit pretty well inside this, I could just keep it in this bowl, but my next size up is slightly too large. So I'm just going to transfer it into a smaller bowl. You could put it into, if you have a ceramic crock, that would be perfect. You could use the inside of your crock pot. I'm just going to use this slightly smaller bowl, but any glass or ceramic container you can put it into, and we are going to come back and check on this. We're going to leave it out for maybe 2 or 3 hours and check on it every hour. And what I want to do is even this out, and I'm going to put this plate over it and squish it down. And you can see it's already starting to form some liquid. That's called the brine. And I want to just make sure after a couple hours that this forms enough liquid to cover this. So I'm going to come back every hour and kind of squish it and squeeze it and press down on it. And I could put something heavy over this too. You could get a heavy jar or just a bag of water, like a Ziploc bag of water, to weigh it down. You could also put, like, let's see, you could put another little bowl over it with a rubber band to weigh it down, or to squeeze it down. And I'm just going to come back and check on it every hour and make sure it's producing brine. Okay, so my kimchi's been out for about 2 hours and I can already see it has enough brine to cover everything. So I am just going to take this off. I just want to make sure all my vegetables are tucked underneath the brine, and that's going to keep them from going bad. If they're above the brine, they won't be protected. The brine is going to keep them fermenting and not exposed to the air. So my plate fits in here pretty well. If I had one that was a tiny bit bigger, it would be better. So I'm just going to try to make sure everything's tucked in there, and then it should produce a little bit more brine, so it should be okay. If your kimchi has been sitting out and it doesn't produce enough liquid to cover everything, you can just mix 1 cup of water with 1 teaspoon of salt. And if you need to, you know, just do 1-to-1 ratio. So you could do 2 cups of water and 2 teaspoons of salt and add it as the brine if you're naturally not getting enough. I have enough, so I'm just gonna keep this on here with the rubber band. Or, like I said, you could use a Ziploc bag full of water to weigh it down. If you ferment food a lot, they do make crocks for this with a weight that goes on here. So if you're interested, that might be something I should maybe invest in, or you could invest in. And then I'm just gonna cover this with a clean towel. And I'm going to put it out of direct sunlight. This should cover it pretty well, but if I just want to put it towards the back of my counter, I'm going to leave this out for about 5 days to ferment. Anywhere from like 3 to 5 days. You can check it and see if it's bubbling, and you'll know it's fermenting. If you're worried about it, I've done this many times and it's fine sitting out, but if you're scared to leave it sitting out, you could do it in the refrigerator. It'll probably take about twice as long, so just put it in your refrigerator and keep checking it and make sure it bubbles to make sure it's fermenting. So I'll come back and check this in a few days and see how it is. Okay, so it's been 1 week exactly. So I'm gonna check my kimchi. I've been checking it throughout the week and I haven't noticed a lot of bubbles. I can see a couple really small ones in between the pieces of cabbage, but it might be because I packed it down so much that I don't really see them. But I'm sure it's done. I don't want to leave it out any longer than a week. So I'm just going to take it out and I'm going to put it into some jars and put it in the refrigerator. And I can also smell, it smells kind of sour. It smells a little sour and spicy. And it looks really good. So I can eat some of this, and there's obviously a lot here, so whatever I don't want to use, I'll just put into jars to store. If you have one of these canning funnels, it comes in really handy. You can just get them in the canning section at the grocery store. And then I'm gonna eat this kimchi. So I already gave some ideas of ways you could use it. And then you might notice I have a lot of this liquid. Now this is gonna have a lot of really healthy probiotics. So after I finish the kimchi, I don't wanna waste that liquid. So you can use it to make salad dressing. You can stir it into some cottage cheese or mayo and make a nice kind of spicy dip. You could use it, like if you stir it into the mayo, you could use it as a sandwich spread. You can stir it into hummus. You can just pour it over some rice. You don't necessarily want to cook it because that will kill any helpful bacteria that might be in there. But you could add it to a soup after you've already cooked it. You could just stir it in right at the end. I'm sure there's lots of other things you can do with it, but don't let it go to waste. So this kimchi smells really good. It's really fun to make, and like I said, if you don't want it too spicy, you don't have to add any of the chili pepper, or you could just add like a pinch. But it's a really fun thing to make, and it's really good, definitely worth it. So I hope you like this project, and I hope you try to ferment some kimchi. I also wanted to show my avocado pit. I don't know if anyone tried to grow their avocado pit from a couple of videos ago, but mine has a long root, and today it just started to sprout out the top. So I'm excited to see how big I can get this to grow. So after this starts growing like this, you can put it into a pot with some dirt in it, and just, you can probably keep it outside in the summer, but I would definitely bring it in during the winter, or you can just keep it inside all the time near a sunny window. So thanks for watching my video and happy kimchi fermenting.